Hello and welcome to the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. The Local Leaders Podcast provides a platform for successful business owners to share their stories, their experiences, their advice, and their ideas in order to help our listeners achieve more success in their business and in their lives. Get ready, another great show is coming up. Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson, and we appreciate our listeners being here today, and we're excited about our guests today. We've got two people with us from Soul Taco and Jewfro out of Richmond, Virginia. We've got Nar Hovnanian, and Arrie Augenbaum. Welcome to the show, guys.
So you nailed it.
Well,
Thank you. We're super excited to be here.
I know, I practiced there beforehand, and I still struggle. But thank you guys both, Nar and Arrie, for being here on a snowy day in North Carolina. Of course, you guys are in Virginia and didn't quite get as much, but we appreciate you being here. And I want to kind of start us out and just have you all share share your story about the business. You got two concepts, and maybe you want to talk about each just a little bit and give our listeners a sense of who you are and what you're about.
Sure. So yes, you are absolutely correct. We've got two concepts. Our original concept, which started at the end of 2018, about October 2018, in fact, is Soul Taco. So Soul Taco is a taco fusion concept that melds Southern flavors with traditional Latin American flavors that you would find in regular tacos. But I would like to say that we are nothing like anything regular that you've seen in the world of tacos. We have things like fried chicken tacos and cornmeal crusted catfish tacos, and other things like oxtail that you wouldn't normally find in a taco. That concept was meant to be accessible and affordable as much as possible, because we are of the firm belief that people should have access to great fresh food without having to pay ridiculous prices. So everything is from scratch, from start to finish. The only thing that we don't make in-house are our tortillas because we just don't have space. So the original restaurant that we opened in Richmond, Virginia is 700 square feet. So that's including the kitchen that is super, super tiny. If you saw it, you would be confused as to how we were able to operate a restaurant out of that space. But we had been open for about 6 months. Were listed and written up in a bunch of publications, won Best New Restaurant in Richmond, Virginia, and then got a call from Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and Guy Fieri wanted to put us on the show. And then we decided this 700 square foot spot is a little too small for us, and we're getting too big for our britches. So we opened a second location a little bit further downtown in Richmond again, which was a much larger footprint with a full bar and everything. And so that gave us the ability to do a little bit more and serve the people of Richmond a little bit better. So that is the gist of Soul Taco. And then I will let Arrie take Jewfro.
Right. Oh, we're stopping there?
Yeah.
I feel like you sold us short. We've got so much more.
There is more, but I feel like we'll get into it. I didn't want to just...
So we were, during the pandemic, we were reached out by a local nightclub in Richmond, and they reached out to us and said, hey, look, guys, here's the deal. We can't be a nightclub anymore. The government shut down our dance floor. They shut down our bars, but we need to transition our business. We need to do something else. Would you be willing to take over our kitchen and give us good quality food? Since, it was a nightclub. They were serving freezer to table because no one cares about the food at nightclubs.
Right.
And they wanted to transition into a lounge during COVID. So we said, all right, let's take a look. Let's see what we can do. So we took on this contract to run the rooftop club so that they could become a lounge until the city allowed them to reopen. And with that, they also had a fine dining restaurant on the ground floor of the hotel. We took a look at that ground floor space and we were like, hey guys, the space is just sitting empty. we're already running your restaurant on the roof. Maybe we could do something where we could, I don't know, rent it for short term so that you can still have it when the pandemic ends, but we can do something in here in the meantime. And so they were like, oh, this is a great idea. If you guys agree to sell through the liquor we have dying on the shelves that are killing us on our books, we can work out a deal where we partner on this. We were lucky enough they already had their licenses. Everything was in place. The place was operational, legally operational. We had everything good to go. And so we started this pop-up concept down there. And we rotated it every couple of months during COVID. And we hit on this concept of Jewfro. The idea behind Jewfro is it's a Jewish African fusion restaurant. According to our research, first of its kind. We haven't been able to find anything even remotely similar to it. And the idea was it sparked from a conversation, everything that was going on last year and the civil rights protests and everything that was happening. And Nick Cannon, if I remember correctly, had made some anti-Semitic comments, and it started the conversation between Trey, one of the founders of this company. The founders are myself, Nar, and Trey, and it started this conversation between us and really about the history of both my people, Nar, who's Armenian, and her people, and obviously Trey's people. And we started discussing what was going on, and Trey came up with this idea that we could do a fusion concept of Jewish and African food, and really touch on the food that was, the things that bring us together rather than the things that pull us apart, and do this concept that we put together. We did it as a pop-up, and it just got this amazing response. We were doing everything from scratch in-house, baking our own breads, curing our own meats, a Jewish deli by day, and a small plates fine dining at night. And we brought in a mixologist from Michelin caliber restaurants, and our good friend Paul. What is it? Paulie Want a Cocktail, for those out there who are looking for a beverage consultant. He works for us full time, but he is doing his consulting thing on the side. And he's put out this just absolutely ridiculous cocktail menu, just doing crazy innovative drinks. Nar put together with her Taylor, what's her company?
Sugar Taylor Co.
Oh, that makes sense. And they did the design work for the restaurant. They built out this beautiful space for us, and it's just been killing it since we've opened, to a point that we are now in the process of opening a second Jewfro location and a third Soul Taco, which will be in Raleigh, North Carolina, targeted opening as soon as we can.
That is awesome and amazing, and actually, that's pretty fast moving, because you didn't say exactly when you took over that bottom floor space and where Jewfro was concepted, I guess. But how far back has that been?
So we did that. It's been, I guess, a little over a year, because our first concept that when we took over the bottom floor space was a holiday concept. So I think we started Halloween
November
weekend, and then we ran a holiday concept through New Year's. And then after that, we took about a month break to develop the new concept, and started, I think it was about mid-February. Actually, it may have been before that, because I remember, early February, because I think we did a Valentine's Day brunch. But yeah, early February, we had already come up with the idea of Jewfro, and had, a bunch of menu calls with our chefs and, culinary team, and just kind of came up with the concept.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really nice to see when you hit on something that's successful, that you're able to, quickly be able to, take advantage and grow the business. And you guys are rocking and rolling over there in Richmond at the moment, and soon to be in Raleigh. So we're looking forward to that. You'll be a little closer to me, and I'm looking forward to your expansion. Yeah, hey, I'd love to ask, because I find it interesting when there's three partners, in a business. How do you guys kind of divvy up the responsibilities? What do each of you, what parts of the business do each of you handle yourselves?
Mostly we throw darts at a board when we have a project, and whoever gets closest to it is responsible.
No, I mean, we all kind of have our own purview, but also we all have our hands in a lot of different pots. and sometimes some of the same pots. So Ari is our chef and executive culinary director, whatever title we decide to give him on that
Senior
day.
culinary
Senior,
director.
yeah, whatever. He's the one that kind of spearheads all the menu development and all the concepts and deals with the kitchen stuff. I am mainly in charge of the marketing piece, the branding, the websites, the social media, the design, the visual brand, all of that stuff. But then also find myself, because there are only 3 of us, also find myself being a little bit of HR. And also just really whatever needs to be done, as far as operations in the restaurant. All 3 of us kind of have our hands in the pot. Trey does a lot of the community engagement. He is from Richmond originally. So he's got those, Richmond connections. So he's also a very great people person. So that's kind of his role, as well as the operations piece in the restaurant. But to be quite honest, at this point, we've kind of all found ourselves. I know as far as I go, like, I am very passionate about food and the culinary side of things. So I try and insert myself as much as possible, to Ari's dismay, probably.
Not at all.
And then he also has a background in business and marketing. So we bounce a lot of ideas off of each other. So really, it's a group effort with, each of us having our own little.
I like to say that Trey is the personality, I am the talent, and Nar is the brains. And without all 3 of those, we don't succeed.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm about to go back and make sure I catch that as a quote, Ari. You can peg that up on your board and make sure everybody remembers what their spot is. But I just find it really intriguing when you've got a partnership like that, and typically people kind of have sections of the business that they're involved in. It sounds like you guys do, but you're also intermingling as well, which is great that you're able to work together and do what needs to be done to make the business successful. So congratulations so far on what you've already done. Hey, I'd love to talk a little bit just about maybe a couple of challenges that you guys have faced in building this, because one of our
No, we don't have those.
Yeah, I know you don't, and you got a dartboard too to be able to handle it. But
Yeah.
one of the things a lot of our listeners, are running into different challenges along the way, and as you start to scale up and grow the business. Anything jump out as like having been a major issue that you've been able to overcome in recent years, other than COVID, of course?
Right. I mean, there is this little thing called COVID,
Yeah.
And all of the
Accounting.
The things
Accounting
that
is
are
the thing.
next. Yeah, accounting has been the most challenging, I think, for us personally. I would say of all 3 of us, Ari's probably the most numbers oriented, and while he's really good at it, we tend to do this thing where we, just like everybody else, like, we like to do certain things and get very excited about certain things. And then there are other things that we're like, that's just a chore. It has to be done, but it's just not fun for us. So that's been a little bit challenging. But as far as growing and growth goes, aside from, being able to keep all of those numbers in order and making sure that every single restaurant is going to be profitable on its own and all of that stuff on the accounting end of things, I think that one of, and I wouldn't say problems, but I would call it a challenge, is keeping that cohesive team, family oriented feel that we're trying to go for. I mean, we're very invested in our team and our people. Our people are our talent, and without them, we are nothing. And when we first opened the first Soul Taco, it was really nice. Everybody was friends. They loved hanging out with each other. They loved, the company culture was just right there in front of you and would kind of smack you in the face anytime you walked into the door. People were happy to be there, and we were physically in the building at all times. And then we opened the second Soul Taco, and we try to keep that going and alive. And then as you grow, it's a little bit difficult to, as far as ownership goes, it's a little bit difficult to kind of be makes people feel like maybe a little forgotten, or a little like, oh, they're moving on now. And so that's been a little bit of a challenge. So trying to maintain that company culture, maintain that like team family mentality, and get people's buy-ins without actually physically being in the restaurants every single day.
We give away a lot of cookies.
We do give away a lot of cookies.
That's our number one resolution to that problem, is a lot of cookies. We've given every one of our managers a cash budget for incentives, completely discretionary, to do whatever they want, whether it's buy a bar tab at the bar next door to the restaurant and take the staff out for drinks, obviously those over 21, or order cookies from one of the what's the place that opens, and have them delivered at the end of night shift. I mean, whatever it is, we try to do that. One of the biggest things that we've done to address the concerns that Nar has brought up is, and I'm stealing this from a company I used to work for called Locals 8, based in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And they used to say they're not a chain, they're a collection of restaurants. And treating it that way, we talk a lot about how words matter and semantics matter, especially in the service industry, but treating it that way and being a collection of restaurants. We are a bunch of individual restaurants, even if they all have the same name. We're not a chain, and we don't want to get that. We don't want our team to feel like they are part of a corporate system and a corporate restaurant chain, because that's where the culture tends to start to dissipate and start to break down.
It's really, to me, it's quite perceptive that you guys kind of locked into that as a challenge, because you're absolutely right. As you start to expand and scale up and add locations, it's, keeping the culture that you started with consistent across multiple locations as you start to spread out geographically. It's a major issue. It's a major hurdle. It's a major challenge, and there's no easy answer for it. So, addressing it as you are seems to be a very good plan, and I'm sure it'll help you, keep that thing together as you continue to grow, because, that challenge just gets harder the more and more concepts or locations that you add. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And as we continue to grow, we've just launched our second concept of Jewfro. And as we open different concepts, that problem becomes a whole different thing, because each concept we have, while the overall corporate culture is the same, the restaurants themselves are completely different concepts. And so it puts us in the position where we're trying to develop and maintain the corporate culture of Soul Taco, but Jewfro has a completely different culture that we want from it. It's a completely different vibe, completely different feel, and a completely different type of person that we expect would be working there. And so trying to develop and maintain the culture and then fuse them together, but also keep them a level of independence on each concept is, as you were, was just piggybacking off of what you were just saying, but that.
Well, that's that you're even more dead on, because I didn't even think about it that way, but you're right. Each concept, different people, different vibes, different, it's going to have some variation, but they've all got to be consistent to the core. I guess you start thinking of core values and things like that, and maybe the Soul Taco piece becomes the core value for the culture, and then everything else is kind of variant under that, but it all links in. So good luck figuring all that out.
Feeds into the challenge even further.
Yeah, exactly. And who knows what the next concept might be as well, right?
That just shows how much of a nerd, because we've got a few in the works, okay? And one of them, oh, sorry, I'm not allowed to talk about them. Sorry, Nar just slapped me across the face. You might have heard it. I'm not allowed to talk about them, sorry.
he tends to get ahead of himself. Aside from the brains, I'm also the brawn. I
mean, somebody's got to slap us into shape every now and again. We're not going to do it ourselves.
Well, eventually I'm going to ask you about what's next, and so maybe Nar will let off.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I just want to make sure that we're, like I said, he tends to get ahead of himself, because we're super passionate about what we do, so we could talk about it for hours.
Yeah, no doubt. And, every restaurant owner, operator that is being successful typically is pumped up and excited about their brand and what it is that they're doing, excited to get up and go to work. every day, and you want to transmit that to your team. But let me switch gears a little bit. We talked about some challenges. Well, first, let me backtrack to COVID. Did you guys, when you started in 2018, obviously none of us anticipated COVID, but is Jewfro and Soul Taco, have both of those brands or concepts been easily adaptable to the off-premise dining that COVID has kind of brought to us all?
So first of all, let's never go back to COVID. Okay.
Well, we're currently in COVID.
But we're never going to go back into COVID. Okay. Even metaphorically, even in a conversation, we're never going back to COVID.
Got it.
But yes and no. The Soul Taco concept is, I mean, it's tacos, and anything really that doesn't carry cheese on it can travel well, reheat well, take out well. You know, we have a few dishes that have melted cheese on them.
Yeah.
As anybody who's ever had food before in their life can tell you, melted cheese that is no longer melted is not exactly the greatest experience. But by and large, they've done very well with the takeout. We've made some adaptations, changed some of the dishes slightly, and put a heavier focus on the online ordering. Jewfro was born during COVID, and so the concept itself had in mind the current changes to the industry when we developed the menus and the concepts. And the AM portion of it, which is primarily sandwiches,
Mm-hmm.
you know, those carry very well. They take out very well. They don't even need to be reheated. They're great hot. They're great cold. They're great lukewarm. They're great however they are. The dinner piece, less so. I mean, we'll be perfectly honest. I'm not going to order a $28 braised lamb shank to be delivered and eat lukewarm 45 minutes later via Uber.
Yep.
I would assume most people don't want poached fish coming out that way.
Yep.
But the adaptation we made during the heart of COVID, when it was a pop-up, we said we were going to do a lunch menu and a dinner menu, and then we quickly transitioned to, we'll allow online guests, you know, Uber, Grubhub, DoorDash, etc., to order the lunch menu all day, because we realized nobody was going to order the rest of the stuff at night.
And it's very interesting because, so first of all, I have to disagree with Ari. I think Soul Taco, I don't think tacos are a great takeout food. I think that they travel well in terms of they're small and compact, but anything other than that, like if you don't eat a taco right where it's cooked, very close to the time that it was cooked, it's a completely different experience. So we really did have to do a lot in terms of coming up with different solutions. We did things like have, come up with an idea of taco kits where essentially we would give you everything cold and ready to heat up, along with some reheating instructions under the premise of like, take this home, and when you're ready for dinner, put it together, and it's almost like you're eating in the restaurant. It's going to take you a little bit of work, but the quality of product that's coming out is a lot better. We also did things like add tortas and sandwiches to our menu so that we would have some things that are good to take out. We did a lot of COVID cooking classes, and we had to really like think hard on that one. Because
those were so fun, though.
Yeah, they were fun. Because tacos don't actually take out very well. They get cold and they get not as good as if they were in the restaurant. I mean, I don't generally order tacos for takeout. And I assume many people don't. But then, like Ari said, Jewfro was absolutely born out of COVID, and it's been interesting to see the transition. So now that we've opened our brick and mortar Jewfro, we really thought that the sandwich portion was going to go heavy and hard because that's what it did during COVID. But we've seen quite the opposite. People are super excited to be out and dining out, and our dinner menu has done way better than our sandwich menu, in the sense that like more people are excited to come out to eat for dinner. And our sandwiches, while we're moving them and they're doing well and they're delicious, dinner seems to be more popular now.
Yeah, very, very well put, and I appreciate you sharing that. That was some great ideas, and a lot of innovation came out of COVID. A lot of changes in technology and different things such as that. Third-party delivery and online ordering. It got huge. I just was looking on the website, and for those who are listening and not viewing, let me throw out the Jewfro website. It's www.jewfrorestaurant.com. I'm assuming there's a separate website for Soul Taco. When do y'all want to hit me with it?
There is, and it's www.soultaco, SOUL, tacorva.com, and RVA is the acronym, I guess, for Richmond, Virginia.
Yep, got it. Thank you. For some reason, didn't have that one on me, and I always like to kind of push our listeners and give them a chance to jump over and check out the menu and learn more about each of the different concepts. And again, I appreciate you guys kind of sharing all that you have so far. And I'm curious about
before we jump on away from the websites, more important than the websites is the social media handles, because that's where all the really cool stuff is. That's where the content is. That's where the pictures and the images, and you can really get a feel for who we are and what we're about on the Instagram handles. So it's a Jewfro restaurant and Soul Taco restaurant.
Easy enough. Jewfro restaurant, Soul Taco restaurant on Instagram to really check out what's going on and get caught up in the excitement of everything these guys have going on. So thank you for sharing that, Ari. I should have been more thoughtful and made sure I brought that out. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you having my back. Hey,
always. This is why we're together. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes, sir. That's what they say. That's what they say for sure. And it's happening right there in Richmond, Virginia, soon to be in Raleigh, which can't wait to be able to check you guys out. And hey, I'm wondering, of those two concepts, well, let me back up. How do you decide when, because this is a big question a lot of our listeners have, is how do you know when it's the right time to go to that next unit? What's the trigger that makes you say, hey, we got to go open up in Raleigh?
That's a great question.
That's
a great question. For a correctly operating.
For us, the answer is generally when we get bored.
Which happens way too often.
Which happens very often. No, but I mean, obviously.
But also, yes.
There are a lot of different things that you have to look at. Number one, how is the restaurant that you're currently operating, the restaurant or restaurants that you're currently operating, how are they going to do if you have to step away and focus your attentions on something else? Do you have the people in place? Do you have the protocols and the operations in place?
Just people, do you have the backup people? Because if the people disappear for any reason,
right,
as we've seen, especially in the restaurant industry, between leaving the job, jail, wherever it is, injuries, having the backup of people. It's not just having the core team.
Yeah.
Right. Did you do your due diligence and make sure that you have trained your managers to a point where they can run the restaurant as if you were in there, and all of that stuff should be in place as far as standard operating procedures and protocols and training manuals and recipes and all of that stuff. All of that stuff helps in being able to maintain the operation of a restaurant without the actual owner or the person that founded it being in the building. And then of course financials, are all of those in line? Do you have enough money to put your build out together and also have, a few months,
8 to 10 months of operating burn rate, as they say.
And then did you do your due diligence in the market that you were moving on to? Are you moving to a different part of the city that you're currently in? Are you planning on, going into a brand new market? When we moved into Raleigh, it took us probably about a year to find a space. We looked at a handful. We were looking at Baltimore and Nashville beforehand. So we did a lot of due diligence and checked a lot of things off of our list. And then did our research on the market, had a great broker who is very knowledgeable in the Raleigh market.
If you guys need one, her name is Liv Jorgensen, from Maverick Partners. If you're looking for a broker in Raleigh, that's the way to go.
She's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, like that, those were all the things that we kind of thought about when we decided to move into a different market. And then, when we were opening the second Soul Taco, it was more of, we already have one in Richmond. Will the current market allow for another one of these? Is there enough need for a second Soul Taco? And then, of course, all of the other things. Is the first one going to fail if we move on to the second one? Are we able to profitably run both restaurants simultaneously, you know,
Do we
all
have the
of those
infrastructure
things,
for
because
it?
it's expensive to open a restaurant, and it's expensive to do all of the build out and, you know, get all the permits and all of the things necessary to start operations.
Yeah, and
Oh, to add on to that, there's a level of opportunity that presents itself as well. I mean, had it not been for COVID, we may not be expanding right now. Not because COVID was excessively profitable for us, it obviously wasn't. But COVID provided an opportunity specifically in this industry of restaurants that failed because of it, and that opened up a plethora of retail marketed space that was below what we would consider market value,
yeah.
combined with restaurants that were already built out as restaurants that didn't succeed, which meant we can come in and do lipstick and rouge cosmetic changes and flip a restaurant for $50,000-$60,000 and get the doors open, as opposed to a ground up build, which can cost, I mean, it can cost millions, but for what we do, somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000 to open. And so this level of opportunities that came out of COVID put us in a position, as Nar said, we were looking in several different cities, and it opened up a world of opportunities for anybody who was in a financial position.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because you're exactly right. It did create a lot of opportunities, a lot of spaces that were available that you just shared. Is, you know, it's a significant difference in money from 250 to 300 plus down to, you know, 50 or 60 to get one ready to go. So good points. And again, when you're bored, then it's time to start going in that direction, right?
Exactly. And for us, it is a little bit well, easier and more difficult, in the sense that, like, we don't like to do brand new ground up, you know, restaurants.
Right.
We'd like to find an existing space that was a restaurant that is outfitted for the things. Hopefully some of the equipment will convey, so that we really just have to do some of the interior design, if you will, and kind of change the space out that way, which is a challenge, because you got to work with what you have, right? Like, obviously everything way better, because you can think about your concept, what makes the most sense. But also, I think that's a challenge that we also kind of like to tackle for every new restaurant that we open. Like, how will this space make sense for Jewfro? What do we have to do? What things do we have to put in place for our current menu to work? What tweaks do we have to make? All of that.
Yeah, a lot of work when it comes to figuring out which way to go and what to do. But let me ask you this. So right now you guys are all corporate owned locations. Is that your future growth path, to continue to operate your own corporate units, or are you considering other options?
So when we first started out, I said on day one, I said, Nar and Trey, 50 in 5 years. And they both laughed at me. They were like, yeah, okay, let's see if we can make this one last 6 months. And here we are now. We don't count COVID. So without COVID, we're 2 years into operations, and we're getting ready to open restaurants number 4 and 5. And so they're looking at me going, maybe you weren't crazy when you said 50 in 5 years. The original growth plan was to start with one in the initial market in Richmond, and then expand in Richmond to add a second one. Basically proof of concept and then proof of expansion. And then step 3 was to open one in what we like to call an island market, you know, someplace that is not connected to Richmond, not connected to the reputation in Richmond, and show that this concept can succeed and thrive anywhere that we drop it. And then from there, the expansion really becomes anything and everything. Once we show that it succeeds in Raleigh, we can have more than one in any given city, and we can successfully operate the restaurants across state lines and be in different places and still operate successfully without having to be in any specific location at any given time. Then we open up the doors to any level of growth that we want. We have talked a lot about franchising versus raising capital to keep them all corporate owned. And I think what we'll probably end up with in the long term is somewhere in between, where we have a certain number of corporate run stores and then the rest being franchises. We've spoken to several potential franchisees over the years. We've never really gotten far enough with any of them to make it a thing. We've also spoken to a couple of the companies that help put together and sell franchises. But again, we just never really followed through with that stuff at this point. But I think the long answer that I just gave to the short answer of will probably be some combination of both.
Yeah, I like that because it gives you the opportunity to maintain control of the corporate-owned stores and have your thing, as well as the growth potential of franchising to be able to get out there and get more of a national brand recognition without all the capital up front, because your franchisees are bringing that capital. And I think that's a great way to grow and to think about it, and that way you can go at your own pace. When you get too much money stacked up in the bank, then you can add another corporate store, and when you get low, you can add some franchises.
Exact. Sounds good to me.
That's my strategy right there. Yeah, just watch the bank.
I look at that different. When you have enough money stacked up in the bank, it's time to retire.
Well, yeah, that's another point as well, and or sell that puppy off and run off into the sunset and go to the beach or wherever it is that you want to go. But yeah, I mean,
promise Nar that. Yeah, I was going to say I did promise Nar a few years back we could run this from Fiji within 5 years.
That should have been part of your 50 and 5 years in Fiji.
Right.
55 years.
Yeah,
Fiji.
So we can run this from the beach.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. Build it out so that it successfully operates independently.
Absolutely. What a great goal, and you guys are well on your way. For all of our listeners, I'm sure it's been really informative and educational to kind of hear from you. And as we get closer to closing out, I want to be respectful of your time. We've been talking about 30 minutes, maybe 35, so we probably need to wind it down. But I wanted to just ask a quick question about two things, or two quick questions. So marketing, what are you doing? I think it's going to be Instagram is primarily what you guys are doing. Anything else different that's working? I'd love to hear about it. And technology, what are you using technology wise to be able to manage your off-premise and on-premise dining?
Yeah, so marketing wise, we try and hit it from all sides, to be quite honest with you. Social media marketing, absolutely very big. That is something that I have a pretty strong background in, and I helped grow our Instagram pages and Facebook and all of that. But at the same time, it's super important to, I think, at this day and age, to do all of the things. So we use a lot of email marketing. We use some traditional marketing, everything from, if we have an event this week, we're going to put little flyers in bags. If I'm going to send out blast emails when things are coming up. I'm going to try and cross collaborate with other small businesses that make sense to partner with, whether it's having one of their products available in our restaurant, using a local baker to provide desserts for us, things like that. There are a lot of different ways to market a restaurant, and even everything down to, we get table tents made for all of the things coming up in the restaurant, so people that are dining in the restaurant get some level of marketing, people that are mainly to go or online clientele get some level of marketing, and then of course the social media world sees whatever it is they see on social media. So it's a constant effort in a lot of different ways. We've seen that as far as Richmond goes, community-based marketing works really well. Collaborating with local businesses, making sure that we know the players in, not only the local food bloggers and things like that, but then of course like the Richmond-based organizations that are there to kind of and local restaurants and work closely with them. And then doing things like working with the local community, donating as much as we possibly can. All of that stuff helps not only is it part of our mission and our corporate culture, but it also kind of helps get the word out and the name out, and it helps people kind of see you in a positive light. And that's really all we want. We want people to be talking about us and being like, hey, did you guys see what Soul Taco is doing, in the sense of innovative and interesting, but also in the sense that like we are part of the community, we are a staple here, and we want to be a positive impact.
Well said. One follow-up question. How do you split the time, I guess, between two concepts, Jewfro and Soul Taco, in your promotional pieces? I mean, are you having to like do Soul Taco stuff and then Jewfro stuff, or if you figured out a way to meld those together?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we have a team, and our team is super integral in making sure all of the pieces operate. So while I manage the social media pieces, I will work with the managers in the restaurant to, send them artwork and say, hey, can you print these things out and make sure that we have them available in the restaurants? Or, I work with a catering manager who does a lot of event promotion and stuff for me as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is just kind of time management, using the tools that are available to us, and trying to plan ahead.
Got it. Good point. Technology, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up.
Technology.
POS systems, I think you already mentioned the third-party delivery apps, or was that another conversation? I can't remember now. All that kind of stuff. What are you using POS-wise?
POS, we're currently using Toast. We started with Upserve and made a transition during COVID, mostly because we found that Toast's platform made more sense with the modern changing times. We were happy with Upserve until COVID, really, and then things like QR codes, they just weren't ready for this kind of stuff, which nobody was, but some of the companies with the bigger teams were able to adapt a little bit stronger. We use most of the major players when it comes to the online ordering. We use DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber, of course. And then some of the local players, we use Chop Chop, which is local to Richmond. And then we use another company, it's Loco, which is kind of, they basically provide drivers and take over where Uber and Grubhub and DoorDash leave off and expand the delivery radius. So rather than Uber and Grubhub, which I think have a 5-mile radius, they extend the radius up to, I think, 30 miles or so.
Wow.
They handle a lot of the social, or a lot of the KPIs that Uber and Grubhub and those companies track. So they handle a lot of that for us, so we don't have to get actively involved in learning the systems, if you will.
Yep. Yeah, that's interesting to know, because there's a lot of restaurants and businesses out there in more of the rural areas that don't necessarily have the big three that they can always go to and depend on. So it's good to know there's other options out there for them. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we saw a lot of during the pandemic when it came to like Uber and Grubhub was other restaurant owners talking about how expensive they can be. And that was one of those things that, if you're utilizing it in the right fashion, it makes a lot of sense. If you're not, I saw some people posted up that they were spending 50-60% of their revenue on Uber deliveries. And, you have to take the time to understand how the system is put in place, what it can do for you, and how to make it beneficial. I mean, we talked about this, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. Doesn't make sense for us to hire a team of delivery drivers and get marketing and branding and get it out there that we're doing our own delivery? Or does it make sense to pay Uber 25% and let them do it for us? And, what promotions will yield returns versus which promotions are just going to end up sinking money into Uber and DoorDash, and make sure that we're utilizing the right mix of marketing materials.
Very, very good point. And, something I think a lot of people probably don't do the legwork to really understand. A lot of people don't really understand how these things work. And, you've really got to dig in and understand what your opportunities are and how to use them effectively so that you can still make a profit and feed the hungry. So thank you for that. Hey, you know, as I said, I want to be cognizant of our time, and we're about out of it. So I'm gonna close this thing down, but just want to remind all of our listeners that we're talking with Soul Taco and Jewfro. We've got a couple of the partners here with us today, Nar and Arrie, and we appreciate you guys being on. Any last final thoughts or anything that you wanted to share that I failed to ask you about?
I think we brushed on all the fun things.
Yeah, I think we covered everything. Just, anybody out there listening that finds this interesting or entertaining at all, come on by in Richmond or Raleigh. We would love to feed you and meet you guys. This is why we do what we do.
Absolutely. Very well said. And hey, if you're looking for work, there might even be an opportunity there as well. So we might turn this thing into a recruitment video before it's over.
Oh, why not? Why not? We're always looking for great teams.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for you guys being with us today. It's been very informative, and I'm sure our listeners have gleaned quite a lot of value out of all the things that you shared. We're excited to have had you on and have you spend your time with us. So thank you, and we wish you the best. And for all our listeners, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show.